Welcome to Raising Extreme Athletes Uncensored. This is your reality check and home for uncensored, trusted advice and stories from the trailblazers who came before us, because it takes a strategic village to raise an extreme pro athlete. This is your village. Today, we're going to be talking about protecting your kids from you. That's right. You heard it right. Let's figure out how to protect our kids from ourselves, because that could be a real damaging situation. I'm Marina, your host, mother of 2 aspiring rock climbers and a wife to an extreme athlete. Protecting your child. I'm going to repeat this over and over again because it's really that important. There are so many things we need to protect our kids from. And I'm not talking about like the helicopter parent and being overprotective. No, I'm talking about realistic shit that we need to protect them from, right? Because if we're not going to be protecting them from keeping it fun, from making sure that it does not go wrong, or from the bad coaches and from other stuff that we have complete control over in protecting, right? That's what I'm talking about when I talk about protecting. But in this episode, I want to focus on protecting them from us, from you. Okay? Why? Because this is such an easy rabbit hole to go down. And I actually have several episodes talking about your lack of success is not the responsibility of your child. Literally. Okay? Let's talk about the most infamous soccer mom, right? The whole soccer mom thing. That is not a positive thing. Yeah, it's one thing to be, supportive, but it's another thing pushing. My brother was into hockey when he was in high school. He was really into hockey. He was in the United States. We have, varsity and junior varsity. He was in varsity. He was actually even the captain of his team. And there were some kids on his, the team, right? That were phenomenal. They were phenomenal. They just had that it factor. They had that talent because of the team that they were on. They were also on a traveling team. Gratefully, they were, training. That's the beauty of those types of sports that are really mainstream. There's a lot more accessibility to it. A couple of them really stood out, not only because they were so good, but because of their parents. Their fathers in particular, there was 2 of them in particular, who probably were decent hockey players, maybe even really good in high school, and they just couldn't do it for whatever reason. Maybe their parents didn't have the time. It's a very expensive sport, and they missed their chance. They never succeeded. They never became those people. And the pressure they were putting on their kids, we all saw it. I was my brother's sister, so I wasn't even part of it all the time because I was in university when my brother was doing this. But I was, it was devastating to the point where it was 2 in particular, the kids hated hockey. And they were like, if you know anything about hockey, like the next Wayne Gretzky. I mean, these kids had it. And they started to fucking hate the sport with every ounce of their being because their fathers were just pushing them. It was horrible. The fathers were just putting their own lack of success, their own lack of not being able to do it into them. And it backfired because that agenda only goes one way and it does not go the right way. And I've always been curious about them, like, what happened to them? Because they literally when the scouts would arrive, the scouts will be looking at them like that's how good they were. And I asked my brother one time, I'm like, so whatever happened to those kids? Both of those boys, and there were several others, but those in particular, both boys became addicted to drugs, never touched a hockey stick in their lives. And the worst thing, and for me, this is the worst thing, they stopped talking to their fathers altogether. What is the deal here, guys? You need to wake up. If you are in that rabbit hole and you're pushing your agenda, I'm sorry, it's not going to go very far. And don't get me wrong, I see myself doing it once in a while too, not from my lack of success at all, but because I also see this potential in my kids and I want to push it. And, we need to back off. And actually, you also need to know your limitation. Like there are times when I don't even go to some places. Like I go to the competition, but when it's time for them to compete, I really have a hard time being there. My husband is really good at that. And then he's really great at assessing, what went wrong, what went right. He's fantastic. I don't have that kind of perspective, right? Like I'm very subjective. He could be very objective. And I actually have an entire episode about the strengths and weaknesses in the family as well. I really recommend checking that out. But I also am now learning to protect my kids from me, right? Because that could be the most damaging thing of all. So you need to understand what that is, and you need to start to recognize it and stepping away if necessary. So please own up to what is happening. You don't want to have that worst case scenario that your kids don't even speak to you anymore. Okay, so I want to hear your stories. Are there any stories? Have you seen it happen? Do you see yourself getting into that thing once in a while? Because it happens. We're humans. It's natural. I want to know your, situation. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with others because it could be really life-changing. And make sure to share it with your friends as well. And if you have any questions, that's what we're here for. It is about that strategic village. All right, guys, and thanks for listening.